The loudest noise in a house isn't a scream. It is the heavy silence of a father waiting for a son who is too busy. In psychology, we call this the invisible wall. You share a roof, you breathe the same air, but you do not share a life. A father's heart doesn't crave your money or gifts. It starves for a single moment of your time, a look, or a simple hello. Meet Arthur. He is 78, sitting in his favorite torn armchair, watching his son walk past him like a total stranger. David is a leader, a success in the eyes of the world, but he is failing at the only job that actually matters, being a son. He forgot the hand that taught him how to walk. He forgot the gentle voice that once sang him to sleep every single night. Now, that voice is just an interruption. Arthur has stories trapped inside his soul, stories of war and his very first love. But the door to David's heart is locked tight. Every "not now, Dad" is another heavy brick in a wall that's becoming too high. Psychologists say old age is a second childhood, but it's a childhood without hope, where you only wait for the silence to end. They treat their parents' aging as an inconvenience. They forget that this inconvenience once sacrificed everything for their future. Old age is a mirror of childhood, but without the hope of growing up. It is a slow walk into the sunset, where every step feels heavier than the last. Arthur remembers teaching David how to tie his shoes with infinite patience. He never said, "I'm busy." He never looked at his watch. But now, Arthur's hands shake as he tries to pour his tea. David sighs in frustration, not realizing those same hands once saved him from every fall. We treat our parents' aging as a personal insult to our busy lives. We forget that their slowness is just the soul preparing for a long, final journey. In the USA, thousands of elderly people die not from disease, but from broken heart syndrome. It's the agony of being alive but not being seen. They repeat their stories because those memories are the only bridge left. When you answer with anger, you burn that bridge while they are still on it. Arthur sits in the garden, watching the autumn leaves fall. He sees himself in those leaves, dry, brittle, and waiting for the wind to take him. He remembers the smell of David's hair as a baby. Now, the only scent in the room is the smell of old paper and the cold air of a silent house. Your parents don't want your money. They want the 5 minutes you give to a stranger on TikTok. They want the eye contact you give to your screen. They were the only ones who loved you before you were someone. They loved the nothing you had. Now you have everything, and they have nothing. One night, the house felt colder than usual. There was no clinking of a spoon against a plate, no hum of the old radio playing jazz. David entered with his usual heavy sigh, ready to say, "Not now, Dad." But the living room was empty. The TV was just a black mirror. He walked toward his father's room, his heart suddenly heavy with an unexplained fear. Silence has a weight, and tonight it was crushing. He pushed the door open. "Dad?" he whispered. But the only answer was the cold breeze blowing through an open window, mocking him. Arthur lay there, looking like he was just sleeping, but his chest was still. The man who waited for a hello had finally stopped waiting. David grabbed his father's hand. It was like ice. The hand that once carried him across the street was now a weight he couldn't lift. He found a small leather notebook on the bedside table. On the cover, in shaky handwriting, it said, "Things I wanted to tell David today." David opened it. March 12th. David looked happy today. March 15th. He was in a meeting, but he looked so handsome in his suit. Every page was a record of David's life seen from a distance. A father who lived for a son who was too busy to even notice him. The last entry was from tonight. It simply said, "I know you're tired, son. I'll ask you about your day in my dreams. I love you." The funeral was small, just like Arthur's life. A few old friends, a priest, and a son who finally had all the time in the world for his father. David stood by the grave, the rain washing away his tears, but not his guilt. He realized that the ground was now the only thing holding his father. He looked at the flowers on the coffin. They were beautiful, but Arthur couldn't smell them. We give the best flowers to the dead, not the living. Psychology says we cry at funerals because we are mourning the things we didn't say. We are crying for the hellos that were never spoken. When David returned home, the silence was different. It wasn't the silence of a man waiting. It was the silence of a house that had died. He sat in Arthur's armchair. It still smelled like him, a mix of old peppermint and cedarwood. The scent was a ghost he couldn't escape. He looked at the TV. He remembered how Arthur used to turn the volume up too high just to feel like there was someone else in the room. Every corner of the house screamed his name. The kitchen where he made tea, the hallway where he stood waiting, the porch where he sat alone. David realized that being busy was just a mask for being selfish. He was building a kingdom, but he had lost the person he was building it for. He picked up the phone. He scrolled to Dad. He wanted to call just once more, but the call button was now a bridge to nowhere. The for sale sign went up on the lawn, a cold wooden board that told the world Arthur's life was now just a piece of real estate. David walked through the empty rooms. His footsteps echoed like ghosts, mocking him for the silence he once chose to maintain. He saw the mark on the kitchen wall, small pencil lines showing how much he had grown every year. Arthur had kept them all. Each line was a day Arthur spent celebrating his son's growth while the son was busy counting his own money and success. He found a box of old toys in the attic, a wooden train Arthur had carved by hand when they couldn't afford anything else. David held it, the wood still smooth from his father's touch. He realized that love isn't found in a bank account, but in a piece of wood. The new owners came to see the house. They complained about the old wallpaper. They didn't see the memories hidden behind it. To them, it was just 2,000 square feet. To David, it was the only place where he was ever truly loved without any conditions. He handed over the keys. The metal felt heavy, like he was handing over his father's soul to a stranger for a few pieces of silver. He sat in his car, looking at the house for the last time. He realized that the silent room was now everywhere he went. David lived in a penthouse now, surrounded by gold and glass. But every night, the silence of that old house followed him like a shadow. He realized that success is a lonely mountain if you have no one to show the view to. He had the world, but he had lost his home. In psychology, we call this the delayed grief. It is the pain that waits until you are successful to remind you of what you sacrificed. We spend our youth running away from our parents, only to spend our old age wishing we could run back to them for just 1 hour. Arthur's chair was gone. His clothes were donated. His voice was a memory, but his love was a debt David could never repay. If you are watching this and your father is still alive, You are holding a treasure that a billionaire would trade his entire fortune for. Don't wait for the for sale sign. Don't wait for the empty armchair. Don't wait for the notebook with the blank pages. Pick up the phone. Better yet, walk into the next room. Sit down. Listen, not with your ears, but with your entire heart. Ask them about their first kiss. Ask them about their biggest fear. Let them tell the same story for the 100th time. It's a gift. Because one day, the house will be quiet, and you will give everything just to hear that annoying story one last time. Call them now.